What's the toughest job interview question you've ever been asked that put you on the spot, that you kind of went, you just froze up and you didn't know what to answer, and the only answer you said was like, like that. That was your answer or something. Have you ever had a question like that? What was that question? Tell me that. Let's go through some of these. A very common one is, why did you leave your last job? Bottom line, if you were laid off, it's usually totally fine to say that. Like, look, I was laid off. The company was downsizing, so I was terminated without cause. Like, it was had nothing to do with my performance. If you were laid off with like a whole bunch of other people, say that. Like, yeah, like all of us were laid off. The entire department was laid off, right, at the same time. That shows there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly fine. If you left a job voluntarily, you weren't fired, you weren't terminated or laid off, but you decided to leave voluntarily, that's mostly okay, but you have to give an explanation with it, because you don't want them to think that you're the type of person that just leaves things. Now, on your resume, they will know if you've had like suspicious like employment history, like you've worked 3 months in one place, 3 months in another, 3 months in another, like you're job hopping, right? That suggests that you're the type of person that leaves after 3 months. And if they hired you, you'd probably leave after 3 months if they hired you for this job. So that's usually where the definitive source. But what you don't want to do is, if you say that, oh, I left, then, they think that, well, then you could leave this job. You're the type of person that leaves. So you give a little explanation. You say something legitimate along the lines of, this job didn't really, it morphed into a different thing, or there were changes, there was a new boss and I didn't really, they were taking the operation in a different direction. I wasn't really interested in doing that, or something like that. Okay, but if you were fired, that's where this gets interesting, okay? Now, the thing is that recruiters are trained on a principle, okay? They're trained when you take like a HR certificate in like recruitment and selection, they train you on several things, and they train you on a principle where it says that past behavior predicts future behavior. That's why they ask behavioral questions, by the way. Tell me about a time you did this. Do they care about what you did in some other job? No. But they care about, if they put you in that situation again, what are you likely to do? And so they're operating on this principle. If you did this thing in the past, then we're going to make the assumption that you would do that thing again if you were in the same situation. So it's a bit flimsy, because people can grow, people can learn, people can change, but they're basing it on stereotypes and assumptions, right? So if you were fired from your last job and they say, why did you leave your last job? And you say, oh, I was fired. That can be the kiss of death, because what this principle is saying is that if you're the type of person that got fired from your last job, you have a higher chance of being fired from this job if we were to hire you. So that's the problem with admitting that. So you try to avoid saying, I was fired. We all know that you could be fired for possibly legitimate reasons, right? You screwed around and you didn't do your job, and you were super lazy and you were disruptive, and you just fell asleep every day instead of working. Like, yeah, okay. That's maybe a legitimate call. But we also know that you can be fired for less than legitimate reasons. Like in Michael's case, oh, I didn't get along with my boss. Well, maybe your boss was a raging psychopath who hated everybody and had a real problem with people like you. So they fired you. They concocted a reason and then fired you, basically because they didn't like you, right? That has been known. That happens quite a lot. Just because you're fired, does that mean that now you're like unhireable, that you're a bad employee and that you will never work out at any job? Of course not. But we don't want people to make that assumption. So don't say you were fired, because to be honest with you, I wouldn't lie by saying I was not fired. I would just not volunteer it. I would say maybe I left. And you could use, depending if this describes your thing, you could say like, listen, I signed on for a very specific job. It was to do a certain thing under certain conditions, and I was happy to do it. And it played to my strength and to my interest. However, over time, the job morphed into something completely different. It was a totally different job. It did not play to my strength, and neither did it play to my interest. So that's why that ended. I'm ready to do more. I would use those magic words. I was just ready to do more. What you don't want to do in a job interview is you don't want to talk all about how some other job you did didn't work out. What kind of impression does that give? A very bad one. If you've never met someone and you first meet them and the first thing you hear is, oh, I got fired from this. Oh, this other thing I did, oh, that didn't work out either. I had a problem with this person. Oh, they expected me to do this. And don't they realize that I'm not qualified to do that? What do you think of that person when this is all you've got to go on? It's very negative, right? You're going to think, well, that's not a person I would want to work with. They're probably not good at anything. That's the problem with this question. You want to avoid going in depth and talking all about some past situation that didn't work out. So you want to just gloss over it very quickly and focus on the positive and focus on this job. So for example, a way to do that would be to say, well, that job, it morphed quite a bit. I had a new boss, the role itself kind of changed. And in the end, it turned into something else that didn't speak to my strengths or my interest. And I was ready to do more. And it reiterated my passion for the original role and how my strengths are in that original area. And that's really what I want to do. And that's why I'm here, because this job allows me to do that. And that's what I'm interested in. That's what my strengths play to, and that's why I'm excited to learning more about this job. So that's how I would phrase it. I would kind of not admit you were fired, not even go there. Just say, well, talk about maybe the reasons why it didn't work. Like, well, it was this and it turned into that, but then focus on the positive. I'm interested in this. I'm good at this, and I'm ready to do more than what I was doing there. And that's why I'm here. So it's all positive, positive, positive. And that's how you get off that question and you avoid saying I was fired, because if you don't say it, they'll never know. The only reason they know is because you tell them. So you just don't tell them. It's not doing you any favors. It's not making a good first impression. And the problem is these people they're making all their decisions based on stereotypes and assumptions. And if you say I was fired, they're not going to say, well, some people are good that get fired. Some people deserve it, but doesn't mean they're bad employees. They're not thinking like that. They're thinking, oh, you were fired from there. You're going to get fired from here. So we're going to eliminate you based on the fact you were fired from your last job. That's not fair. So two can play that game. It's about first impressions. So let's talk first impressions and tailor our answers to that. Now, if you got a problem with what I'm saying, I got people in the past that say, well, yeah, I thought honesty counted for something. It's like, okay, yeah, it does. It does. If you think that you should answer differently, go ahead.